Hi, and welcome to College Planning Untangled, where we help families simplify the college planning process. I'm Kristin Clark, and I'm here with Bobby Hood. Bobby, how are you doing today?
Just great. So glad to be here.
Yeah, we've got a very interesting topic today, and that is the fact that college enrollment is actually going down.
Yeah, I think nobody expected this, or nobody talks about it or something, right? But college enrollments have been going down apparently for 10 years, kind of steadily, and then it's starting to really affect things, I think. And people did not expect any of this, right? So
Right. Well, and remember last year or last year, maybe even a little bit earlier, that when COVID was going on,
mhm,
we had discussions about, oh, some kids are going to take a gap year, which might
right.
make it tougher to get into schools, right? Because
Yeah.
now you've got more kids trying to vie for the same places, but that's really not what we're seeing.
Yeah, like we thought there'd be like all like this big glut of people applying, after COVID, like you'd have all these people applying and then it would jump back up. And people were thinking enrollments would jump back up higher again, but they have continued to decline. And that's really interesting and, not expected. And so, yeah, it's hard to tell what exactly that means, but let's talk about like,
Yeah.
what kind of effects this could have or
Well,
what
let's
this
let's
is saying
talk
about
about
students.
let's talk about the fact that college enrollment is going down
Mhm,
and what COVID truly, how that has affected families.
mhm.
Again, we thought that we'd see this surge because the gap year stuff, but really what I think we're seeing and reading about is that, kids and families are figuring out that you can get an education sitting on your couch.
Yeah, and I think this maybe relates a little bit to like how a lot of people started working remotely from home, like in jobs where they used to go in the office, and then they're like, "Oh, hey, we can get our jobs done working remotely." And then so some companies are feeling pressure to continue being remote forever. Like I know some people whose jobs are now remote forever, supposedly,
Right.
right? And so maybe people are like, "Well, I've learned that I can do this." And so the same thing when people said, "Oh, I've learned that I don't have to go to college. There are other options." Maybe they just went and got a job instead and they're like, "Well, why?" It's interesting because once you realize that it's possible, your eyes are open to things, I think.
Yeah. So, and the fact that, you have all these online learning opportunities. So
Yeah,
it's not only, getting education like your four-year colleges, but I think also I would expect, and I don't have any proof of this, Bobby, but my thoughts
right.
on this are that, kids were going out and going, I love doing or talking or thinking about X. And they've been
Mhm.
able to go out and get involved in those types of activities. And I could definitely see that opening up their eyes to different job opportunities.
Absolutely. I think there are like, I read some things that said like students like are realizing that you can learn how to do a lot of jobs through online learning. You don't need to go to college for it. And then they're just like, well, I'll just learn how to do this and go get the job.
Right. Yeah.
That maybe is like what colleges always didn't want anyone to know, right? But there's more to college than just learning one skill, right? There are these
There
other
is.
things. And so I think maybe the idea is people are thinking more about it instead of it just being a done deal. I will go to college, right?
Right. Well, and we know that. We know that you get a lot of
Mhm,
kids that just check the box because mom and dad have been talking about, hey, you're going to college for the last, 17, 18 years.
mhm.
And they just go, okay, well, that's the next thing. So COVID kind of put a wrinkle in some things,
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah,
So the other thing that you and I were talking about before the show is unemployment going down is affecting how many people are going to college.
absolutely. I mean, unemployment is at the very low point historically, and that means there's more jobs. That means more people are getting jobs, and that means in that economy, yeah, like there is a choice between, go to college or I can probably get a good paying job without going to college, and that, it may not affect every group, but it's enough to have affected, you know, enrollment is down 6% or whatever, right? And
Well,
that's a
and
big, big number. That's millions of students.
it is, and yeah, so college enrollment is down 6.6% compared to 2 years ago.
Wow.
That's a
That's
big
big.
number,
Oh, absolutely.
and then the other stat that I was looking at as I was kind of researching this was now 51% of college or high school students are actually saying that they want to go to college versus 71% where it's been historically pretty consistently. That's that's a big
That's
change.
a crazy high change, that just right at half, because yeah, it's always just been assumed, 2/3 of students at least want to go to college or considering it. To go from that to half is such a dramatic change. And I don't like, it would be easy. I think some people would like, the old thought would be like, oh, kids today are less motivated or something. And that is absolutely not the case. From working with students today, I think it's they're paying more attention, and they are actually looking for value in what they get out of their education. They're like, I only want to do things if they make sense to me.
Bobby, I think you hit the nail on the head. Truly. I think that these kids are looking at it and going, "Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Let me think about this because where is my time best served?" And I think that they're less willing than we have been in the past. I can tell you, especially my age group, to just do it because it's the status quo. And I've
Right.
I've said that about millennials for a long time.
Yep.
Even how they're always job hopping, and everybody was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, they're job hopping because they just can't keep a job." And I'm like, "No, you know what? They're not willing to put up with being at a place that they're not happy."
Yeah.
And I think that's actually really healthy, quite honestly.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I think it is much healthier, and that's what I think is interesting. Like, because you see a statistic like this, oh, fewer people are going to college, more people are thinking about other options, and it's easy to like think of, I mean, like all sorts of thoughts about that. But I mean, to me, it's like, oh, people are actually deciding that they're going to figure out why to go to college and figure out a reason, right? And I think this is a hugely positive step, and I think that's the point of like why we're saying this for those who look at our videos.
Yeah,
It's what we've
absolutely.
always preached, which is don't just go to college to check a box. Figure out why. What's the benefit going to be? Figure out what your major ought to be, right? Figure out what you want to do for a career. That will help you choose the right college, choose the
Or
right
the right
major, be
path,
happy, right?
which
Or
might
yeah,
not be
other
college, right?
absolutely right. And that might lead you to say, oh, well, if what I want to do is this, hey, I could go do that. Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
can learn how to do that. And just, yeah. So I think it's a hugely positive step. And I think, it could, these drops in admissions and applications have got to have some really topsy turvy effects on colleges with different numbers of applications coming in and admissions. So I think it makes it, be very intentional when you're applying. I know students right now are writing essays, filling out applications. Be very intentional. If you want to go to a college, tell that college why in your personal statement. Think about why you want to go there. Tell them what major you want to have. Like be aware of this trend. And be intentional about
Yeah,
why you want to
absolutely.
go and what you want to do.
Yeah. So, we talked about COVID and how that's kind of
Yep.
affected this. We talked about unemployment going down.
Yep.
But the third one and this big one that, we've been talking about for a while is just the cost of education being so
Right.
outrageously high right now that, it's just prohibitive for a lot of students to go.
Oh yeah, and I think students are now more aware than ever that, you know, in most cases they're going to have to get student loans. Parents can't always pay for everything, right? And they know that if they go, they may be paying for years and years and years, most of their life. They may be paying loans back, and so they're thinking about it now before they do.
They're thinking
There
about
are
it
stories.
They're thinking about it twice, and I'll tell you what I love is, again, I think the positive side of this is you've got families looking at the true ROI of, okay, do I send this kid to school? So now it's not, I go back to this, there's so many of these families that just check the box and they just say that's the next step. And the reality is it shouldn't be the next step for everybody.
Yep.
Um, you really have to think about it. And I think it's forcing families to think about it, which I think is hugely positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, it may be the next step a year later or something, right? One of the things is like, certainly don't go to college before you are prepared and ready to manage your time and all that. Like we talked last week about time management and study skills and all that. I mean, going to college and then just partying for a semester and then feeling depressed and never leaving your room and dropping out, that's a terrible waste of money. It's a terrible waste of time in your life. And so like be in the right mindset before you choose to do it, right? If you need to take a year first or whatever, or go work for a job for a year and then go to college, whatever, right? Keep these options open. Think about them. Be
Yeah.
intentional when you go.
Yeah. And I think, Bobby, a lot of times we're also talking about the fact that 30% of students that go to college don't go back after their freshman year.
Yeah.
And I kind of look at this opportunity now and seeing these trends and having some more of these conversations with families that I'd love to avoid that number, and
Gosh.
have kids feel very confident about why they're there
Mhm.
and, really thinking about it instead of just checking the box. So, I think even though these numbers are, I'm sure, scary for the colleges,
Great. Yeah.
but I think for families, it's actually something you need to know because I think it's going to make people kind of take a step back, take a breath, think about this, and put a little bit more energy in to the decision. And we also talked earlier about kids being intentional and thinking about what they're going to major in
Mhm.
because the general studies degree or the degree in history or the degree in, you know,
Absolutely right.
you
And yeah, an English degree is not what it used to be. You can't just go necessarily get a job, and students know that. And so, yeah, like, and this is why, like, I always advise students to go and work with you and figure out what their major is, because absolutely, if you are a parent or you're a student and you're thinking, I don't want to be one of those 30% who leaves after the first year. Well, knowing career, what career or types of careers might make you happy will help you figure out what major you should have. And if you are in college learning something that you are feeling excited about that will make a great career for you, then you're less likely to be one of those people who leaves after the first year. And that's why my students who've worked with you and figured out what their strengths are, it's been amazing for them. And I think it really has led to real success in college for them, just
Yeah.
knowing your strengths.
And for those students that figure out that they need a career that doesn't necessarily need college,
Mhm.
that's important as well so that they can make the best decision, an informed decision on what's the best way to get to that goal. And
Absolutely.
yeah. So it's an interesting trend. We've talked about that we're giving opinions here and our thoughts as
Right.
to why this is happening. But we did include a couple of resources just that you can go out and read about it and
Yeah.
learn more about this, especially if you're in that college planning process and really understand what those trends look like.
Absolutely. And just keep in mind, like Kristen and I are always happy to answer questions. We both have a contact form on our website. If you have questions about this, feel free to ask us. I do help students with college admissions. I tutor students for the SAT and ACT. And Kristen does, help students figure out what their strengths are and figure out what career would really make them happy. And I think that's something that every senior should figure out before they make that college choice, and probably even better if you do it as a junior so that you can figure it out. You're not like racing around trying to figure everything out fall senior year when things are really busy.
All right. Well, Bobby, thank you. And we'll
That's
talk
great.
again.
All right. See you next week.
Yeah. If anybody has an opinion on this, please put it in the Facebook chat or YouTube and we'll get to you.
Absolutely.